Hi, this is Jonnie. We're coming with another story today and a poem, and sometimes we come with songs. Today it's a poem. Who has been the greatest influence on your life? Just think about it for a moment. Who had the biggest impact on your life? Was it a mother or father? Was it a grandparent? Was it an aunt or an uncle? Or maybe a teacher? Or even sometimes as we become adults, even co-workers have a big influence. But mostly it's while we're in our formative years. It's the people that raise us and train us. I realized one day that my grandmother and my grandfather had a big impact. Not only my mother and father, they did too, but my grandparents also. There was a survey that said that most people claim that when asked who had the biggest influence on you, most people say, my grandmother. So I wrote a poem to my grandmother and my grandfather. I mentioned him. He had already passed away, but I mentioned him too because he had an influence on me. This is the poem. My grandma, Josephine Lola Sheffield, kid. I don't know if I can say just what you've meant to me, but in some ways you've helped to make the person I would be. For when I was very young, you made impressions on my mind. I know you did, for once in a while. Some of them I find. Now and then they pop up, and I catch a glimpse of you. For without realizing it, I have behaved in a way you taught me to do. I'll give an example of what I mean. It was just the other day. I remembered something you told me and reacted in that way. For example, you taught me not to eat more than my body needed. Through my life, without knowing it, those words from you I've heeded. I didn't realize this until the other day when I started to overeat, and suddenly, way back in my mind, I heard you the story repeat of a man who ate himself to death. It was long ago when you told me that, and yet through the years I remembered, and I never did get too fat. There are other ways you've influenced me, things that are hard to express, but I see them now and then, and your memory I caress. I have some very happy memories of days I spent with you, of sunshine and watermelons, fields, trees, and of cows that said moo. I remember the goat you used to milk. You let me try it too, but I couldn't make the milk come out the way that you could do. Some days I followed you every step, never let you out of my sight, and asked a million questions, I guess, even to the size of a mite. I had a coloring book that I colored in at night. I thought the pictures were so pretty under the kerosene light. Sometimes you let me sweep the floor, and I was oh so proud, for even though I missed some dirt, you praised me long and loud. You used to make pigtails for me, and oh, I loved them so. You made the best playhouses too. They meant more than you know. I'll never forget the feather bed you made with loving care, nor the flowers growing in the yard with their pretty blooms so fair. Oh, I have some precious thoughts, memories of purest gold. Words that cannot be destroyed, things not bought or sold. Yes, Grandma, I owe you more than I can say, for I've turned to be like you in many, many ways. But I keep thinking about Grandpa. I hope it won't make you blue if I say a little something about him too. I can see his smile and feel his hug, and hear him say, "Oh, Johnnykins." He made me feel I was a special little girl, I guess he gave me confidence. He used to give me the watermelon heart under a tree in the shade, and then at night he'd read the Bible and lift his voice when he prayed. And now I know, Grandma, that we'll both be so glad to see him again in heaven and talk over the good times we've had. We have so much to look forward to when we reach heaven someday. No sacrifice could be too great, no price too high to pay. So let us be faithful until we meet upon that heavenly shore, where we will never shed a tear, but live joyously forevermore. And that's the story of my grandmother. I remember when my mother had to have surgery and I went and stayed with her. She was living in a little 3-room house, she and Granddaddy were living in a little 3-room house that my grandfather had built. He had built a whole big project of houses in Tampa, Florida. I tell about it in one of my books, in Kid and Spitfire Doll. But he had become, actually, my sister told me years later that he had actually become a millionaire twice in his life, and both times he lost it. Once it was through the Depression, when all the banks crashed and money was tight. He lost his money then, and another time, I don't know what happened the second time. But they were living very simply, without electricity. They had a hand pump, and it was just a simple life. They had an outside toilet, or outhouse as we called it then. Just a very simple life. But they were precious people. And I was so moved at night when my grandfather would pray loud in the house before we went to bed. It would soothe my fears, if I had any fears that day, and help me to sleep very peacefully. I was about 5 years old when I went to see them, and the poem told you how they influenced me. The scriptures for today, I have two. I have one for grandmothers. The one about grandmothers is in 2 Timothy 1 and 5. And it says, "When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee," or in you, Timothy, "which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois, and also your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that is in thee as well." So Paul is saying, you learned, Timothy, you learned your faith in God from your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. So it's what a wonderful thing to have godly grandparents that teach their grandchildren about their faith in God and how God can help in every time of need that we have. The one about grandfathers is in Proverbs 17:6, and it says, "Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers." So it's saying, grandfathers, your grandchildren are a glory to you. They speak about you. And if you were good to their father and you raised their father right, then it is handed down to the grandchildren, and they will be a crown to you. And that's a wonderful thing to think about. Maybe you're a grandmother or a grandfather and you're watching this video. Pray and ask God to help you to have an influence on your grandchildren, because you may have a better influence than anyone else in the whole wide world. God bless you for watching today. I thank you, and I'll see you again next week on Turnaround Tuesday with another story and a poem, maybe a song. Bye.